But the real story is that I grew up in a small town in the middle of Kansas, and I thought that the city administrator in that town had a cool car. And so I wanted to do what she was doing. I was in high school, and so it just kind of attracted me. But obviously, a lot more went into it. I've always been interested in politics and policy in the public era. But then I was also had this interest in business and management. And public management, what we do as city managers, is the perfect blend of those things. I get to bring those business principles and getting things done into the public sphere.
Father was always in public service somehow. So he was in the Parks and Recreation Department for a bit. He was on the Public Works crew. He was a code enforcement officer for the town I grew up in. And so I grew up in a really small town in Kansas, about 5,000 population. And every day after school, I had an option. I could either walk home or I could walk to City Hall. Those were my choices, and it took me just about as long to walk home as it would if I just waited at City Hall for my father to get off work. So every day for years I would walk to City Hall, and I would sit in the city manager's office and sort of watch what he did every day. I would collect money when people would come into the clerk's office and pay their water bill. I watched the different recreation programs going on in the auditorium, and on occasion I would drive around with my dad and take pictures when he was code enforcement officer. So sort of unknowingly I grew up in that environment, and I also grew up in a town where you're sort of raised by everyone who's in that town. And so whether I was walking down Main Street or in City Hall, everyone sort of took part and sort of, I guess you could say, raising me or had an impact on my life somehow. And so I've always sort of felt that service, or felt that commitment to public service. And when I went to KU, I sort of found public administration and realized that it was a real tangible way to sort of live into that feeling that I had about public service and personal responsibility and building community. And so that's what initially attracted me to it, because it was the sort of the formal way that I could make the impact that I'd been wanting to make.
Even just in the 10 years that I've been working in local government, I've seen massive changes. And ultimately, I think the natures of cities are that they will always be changing. People's needs will always be changing. The resources and abilities that we have as communities to serve them will always be changing. I think even 10 years ago, the use of technology that I've seen in delivering service has changed in a multitude of ways. Everything from paying bills online, to red light speeding cameras, to Web 2.0 kind of communication and functionality. Each of those is changing the way that we as local government serve our communities, and is also changing the ways that our communities lead their lives.
The challenges have changed. It used to be much simpler to be able to deliver services, and we used to be able to have a fairly simple set of expectations from the public. And of course now the expectation of immediacy, the expectation that an answer will be given immediately and that a problem will be solved immediately, requires that our job as managers is much more one of facilitation now. We are there to facilitate problem solving by employees and to facilitate solutions that citizens themselves can find. So yes, the job has changed dramatically. We have much greater emphasis on our fiscal management and accountability and transparency, and the ability to share performance results with citizens. All of those things are an expectation, and they're a very legitimate expectation of the public. But of course 20, 30 years ago, people didn't have that expectation, and so we were able to trudge on in our jobs and keep our heads down and make things happen, but not do it with such transparency and immediacy.
I think everyone who gets into this field, I hope, certainly the people that I meet and that I work with and admire the most, do this because they want to make a difference. And some days that's harder than others, but there are those occasions when you can sit in your office, sit at your desk, or go home at night and say, wow, I actually made things better for that person or for that neighborhood or for that family. And I think that's why we do what we do. Certainly it's why I do it.
City of Pleasanton updated its youth master plan about 10 years ago, and so 10 years, fast forwarding 10 years, we had a need to update the plan again, and the question was, how are we going to do that? And how are we going to do that in a way that was real to the community? And our community has a long history of engaging youth and providing very, very high level of service to the families at Pleasanton, but we genuinely really wanted to get out there and connect with the community and make sure that this was a process that belonged to them. And what I realized early on, after some difficult starts, was that I had all these resources in front of me, and it was a 26-member body that I was working with, made up of youth and adults from our community, from the faith community to nonprofits to the business sector. But the gems of that project were our youth, and they didn't know how to do an update. They just had opinions, and they wanted to tell someone about it, and they knew that they had friends who had opinions. And so with a lot of work and dedication and many after-school hours spent together, we bonded. We became a great working team, and we shared stories and meals and long evenings creating surveys, questions that would evoke thought and meaningful discussion for their peers, and identified a series of several focus groups where we could go out and engage the community. I could see the change in them and the growth as the conversations were going on. The youth began to realize that they could ask follow-up questions, that they didn't have to keep the questions that they had in front of them, that they could engage in more meaningful discussion, that they could debate, that the debate was something that was going to give them a better product. And you could just see them light up and develop.
It is more fun than anything else you can do. You get yelled at a lot, and a lot of people don't like you. You make some terrible decisions and end up in some awful spots. But at the end of the day, it is worth that. It's work that's worth doing. It's worth doing well, and it's a tremendous amount of fun. And the people that you get to work with are just extraordinary. People that run for office and people that decide to serve in appointed positions are extraordinary people. They have decided somewhere along the line to put themselves on the line, if you will, for that quality of life in their government and in their communities. They tend to be gregarious. They tend to be other-centered. They tend to be good people. Most fun to be with, but even when they're not, still good people, and very much worth it. Good work, good people, good things to do.
Another thing that I've learned along the way is that if you don't do some continuing professional development and personal development, you become stale pretty quickly. And so just, reflecting back, I heard one time, a long time ago, a gentleman say, when you stop getting better, you cease to be good. And I think every day that I have been in this profession, that is a little bit more meaningful to me each day. That continuous improvement, the exposure to different people that are out there doing the work, younger people in the profession to learn new things. It's just has been a really great thing for me to continue on that journey of continuous improvement. And I think it's made me a better manager in the long run.
I think that for someone to become a city manager, you have to work very hard and work very long hours. I've always worked more than 50, 60 hours a week my entire career. I think you have to have strong financial management experience. And I think to be successful, you also have to be a risk taker. You have to be able to move around to be a city manager. I've worked in 3 great cities in 3 different states. But you also have to be a risk taker in the types of projects you're willing to take on and participate in. Some that might be a little bit out there, and that's what's helped me and grow in my career and be successful. So those would be my recommendations for those who would aspire to be a city manager: hard work, financial management, and risk taking.
there isn't a more rewarding environment, and I'm not talking monetarily, because professionally and personally, when you can see the impact that you make, when you can see a community go through a number of changes, and in the end, improve the quality of life for folks, there isn't a more satisfactory job. I had the privilege of working for 35 years in California and loved every minute of it. I will admit that although I didn't go to the University of Kansas as Dick Thomas wanted me to, he got me involved in ICMA from a very early age. And I've been dedicated to local government management as a profession and ICMA since that time. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who really wants to do something in terms of public service for folks.
I've watched my classmates at KU and their careers over a number of years. And we all aspired to do the things that we were taught at KU about the values of the profession. And that is honesty, integrity, transparency in everything we do, and always putting the good of the community above the good of ourselves. And so this whole idea of aspiration, inspiration, I think is what hopefully will draw more young people to the profession, knowing that what you do has real meaning, and that at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, you know that you did things for people that they couldn't do for themselves. And to me, that's the most important part of what we do on a daily basis.